Okay, let's work through how to add a top to our box. So in this case, we want to add a top that hinges at the back and insets all the way into the top. So looking at our box design here, let's see the pieces that we need to add. So we need to add a hinge back here that can incorporate the little square tab here that's going to be on the top of our box. That is a pin that goes in there. We're also going to need to cut out some of our box, a slice right here in the front, and the same slice in the back that allows the box top to inset inside the top of the box. And if we look at where our hinge is going to be, we want to make sure that when our top is on, that it is flush with the back over here, completely lined up. So our hinge that we add to the side of the box, we need a hole in it that can accept this square peg, and that is right at the very back of the box, so it's nicely lined up, and also right at the very top of the box. So we're going to start with our basic box design here. We're only going to use the, for right now, let's only use the back and the left of the box to line this up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to draw, let me move to the left layer, we're just going to draw a square. And this square I'm going to make sure has no outline on it. I don't want the size to be messed up because this needs to be very precise. So hold down Shift, click X down here in the bottom left, and that gets rid of the outline. And now I want to make this square exactly the size, the thickness of my material. In this case, I'm using 0.2 inch plywood. So I want to make this square 0.2 inches by 0.2 inches because it's going to represent that little pin that was in the top of the box that allows this inset into the sides. And now we said I'm going to turn the snap-on up here in the top right. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to move this. So let's see if this is the left side. Let's say it's the left from as you're looking at the front of the box. So this pin is going to sit right over here, and I'm going to use snap because I want this to be exactly right. When the top goes on, I want the pin to stick out exactly right in that top left corner of the left side of the box. So again, this is just a guide, but we'll leave it here for a second. Now we need to draw the hole. So I'm just going to draw a circle. Draw it anywhere. I'm going to make the circle transparent and give it an outline just so I can see it a little bit better. That's a little bit big of an outline. Shrink that down to about that. Now I'm going to use the snap function. Actually, let's shrink it down a little bit more. And I'm going to use the snap function up here to snap the circle directly into the center of this square. Now it should jump like that. You can notice X pops up. If it's hard sometimes to get it to jump there like that, remember you can also use the align tools. Control-Shift-A brings up the align dialog box. Click on the square, click on the circle, make sure first selected, and center those on top of each other. And now I'm just going to resize the circle just so it visually looks good to me. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift. That locks the center of it as I resize it and also keeps the circle. I'm going to make it, let's make this a different color so we can see it better. I'm going to make it so it's just a little bit bigger than that square. Remember, the square that pin is going to rotate around inside there freely. So I want the hole that it's in to be a little bit bigger than it. I'm actually going to also shrink down that line a little bit better so I can see it. So something like that seems good. Now that represents the hole. I need to add back the outside of that hinge. So I'm just going to hit Control-D to duplicate that hole, and then just hold down Control and Shift again and make this bigger. So let's turn snap off. Again, this is kind of just by feel. Zoom out so we can see the whole box. How big I want this to look. Again, if it's too small, it's going to be weak and might crack. If it's too big, it's going to be bulky and get in the way. So we're just trying to find something in the middle that has this hinge thick enough where it's not going to break, but has it small enough where it doesn't really get in the way of other things. So I think that looks pretty good right there. All right, so before we union this stuff together, again, that represents the hinge. There's the outside of the hinge. There's the hole that accepts that square. Now, if we look at our box design, I'll go back there for a second. If you notice right over here, when I add this circle in, this box used to have a cutout that was that big on the back as well to accept the back. But now that we have this circle here, the cutout that we need is actually smaller than the original cutout. So we have to add some material back to this. Otherwise, this is just going to get cut. It's going to cut our hinge right out when we go make this. So we're going to, again, visually do this. We're going to go back over here. This purple represents the cutout we're going to make for our box. I'm just going to drag this down. Now you can do a couple things. You can just do this visually. That's perfectly fine. Maybe bring it a little bit below the circle. Maybe bring it at the circle if you want. Again, the thicker this is going to be, the little bit stronger it's going to be. If you want to turn snap on, you could snap it to the direct bottom of the circle if you really wanted to. But anyway, as long as we mainly want to get away from the hole that's going to be cut out and give us enough space here so that it doesn't break off. So something like that looks perfectly fine. Again, we're just making that cutout smaller because we don't want to go all the way to the top because it'll cut out our hinge. All right, now that we also did that, we have to realize we have to also edit the back of our box because this tenon right here in the back of our box does not fit in here anymore because the cutout is only this big. So we're going to just use that cutout. I'm going to hit Control D and duplicate it. Drag it over here. Control D again. Again, I'm using snap to keep these things aligned up. Oops. I'm trying to use snap because I know that this is the size of the cutout that I want. So this is the size of the tenon right here, and I got to cut out material on top of this on the back part. So I can just now get rid of this. Actually, I'll keep it for a second because I got to copy it to the other side. Just duplicate this, drag it over here. And now I can get rid of this, as the blue is going to be the thing that the tenon that's going to fit nicely right into there. And we don't need this as big. Let's just drop this down. The same over here. All right, so now we have our hinge designed. We have our tenon adjusted. We have our cutout adjusted. Now we can merge our hinge together. Hold down Shift, select both of these. Path union. And they're merged together. And I do have my little cutout hole here that's going to cut out a hole that pin will fit in. So let's see, we got the back complete. We got the left complete to make the right. This is easy. We're just going to highlight this whole thing. Duplicate it. Oops, I don't want to duplicate the left. I'll fix that in a second. And we're going to mirror it. So I'm going to hit the little mirror button and mirror everything. And then I'm going to right click, move it to the right layer, which I have turned off, so I might as well turn it back on. And I didn't mean to duplicate that left thing. So now we have our new right piece, and I actually realized I forgot to delete the old one, but that's all right. That will be exactly the same as the left, except for because sometimes the inside of the back of the wood is different than the front of the wood. We want to make sure that the wood matches up. That's how we mirrored it. All right, we have one last thing to do. We need to actually have two last things to do. Let's bring the front back. I don't know why there's a circle there. We need to create the cutout so the box insets into the front and the back, and then we actually need to create the top. So to create the cutout, I'm just going to be a little bit lazy. I'm going to duplicate the side. I'm going to rotate it. Again, use the snap function. Snap it in place. Duplicate it again. Bring it up to the top. Oops, just lost it. Just right click, move it to the front. And then I'm just going to snap that, and I should be able to snap it into the middle. Looks good. Right, the last step is to create the top. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to be a little bit lazy and cheap. I'm going to duplicate the front because I know the top has to be, actually I'm not going to duplicate, I'm going to duplicate this cutout because I know the top has to be the same width as that cutout. Let's make it a new color. So I know it's got to be the width of that cutout, and I know I also want it to be a little bit wider than the side of the box, so it has a little lip. So I'm going to now rotate this, drag it next to this left piece. We don't need the right anymore. Drag it next to this left piece here, so it's lined up completely with the back of the box or with the actual tab, because remember the tab does represent the back piece of this. And now I'm going to drag this to the right. So if I want to make it even with the front of my box, I would make it that big. If I want to make it a little bit bigger, I can now just drag it out a little bit and give myself a little lip here on the edge. And that seems fine. Let's bring this down here. And now the last thing I need to do is add the little tabs on the side, but luckily I have a square right here. I'll duplicate it, move it to that layer, that I can just snap right to the sides of this. If I turn the snap back on, snap it right to there, duplicate it, snap it right up to there, make sure it's on the corner. And then my last step is just to union these all together. And now I have my box made, where I added a hinge to the left and then duplicated it and mirrored it to the right side. I added a cutout on the back and the front to accept the box, and I also changed the cutouts on the back and the cutout on the left so that the tenons fit together nicely. And then we made our top with pins sticking out that should fit right into there. And your last step is just to now make it pretty. Add your designs, add any customizations. But that's a simple way to make a hinge on our simple box.